The morning sun painted the New Mexico desert in golden colors, but Emily Rodriguez barely noticed the beauty anymore. 3 years had passed since the Vextai ships first appeared in Earth's sky, and nothing was the same. The aliens had taken over without firing a single shot. They simply divided humans against each other and watched them fall apart. Emily walked through the dusty streets of what used to be Albuquerque. Now the city had a new name given by their alien rulers, Sector 12B. Large metal signs in strange alien writing hung from every building. Below the alien text, human words spelled out the new rules. Cultural mixing forbidden. Tribal zones must remain separate. Report mixed relationships. She pulled her teaching bag closer to her shoulder. The Vextai still allowed some humans to work, but only within their assigned cultural groups. Emily taught Spanish and English to Hispanic children in the South Zone. She was not supposed to leave this area without permission, but today was different. Today she was breaking the law. Emily had been sneaking out to the Old Town ruins for 6 months now. The Vextai had declared the ancient adobe buildings off limits to everyone. They said it was for safety reasons, but Emily knew better. The aliens wanted to destroy anything that brought different groups of humans together. Old Town had been a place where all cultures mixed and shared their traditions. She slipped through a hole in the fence that surrounded the ruins. Her heart beat fast as she made her way through the empty streets. If the Vextai patrol drones saw her here, she would be in serious trouble. The old San Felipe church stood at the center of the ruins. Its thick walls had survived hundreds of years, and now they provided perfect cover from alien surveillance. Emily pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. "You came," a voice said from the shadows. David Begay emerged from behind one of the old wooden pews. He was tall and lean, with dark hair that reached his shoulders. His brown eyes held a warmth that made Emily forget about all the dangers outside. "I told you I would," Emily said, walking toward him. "I keep my promises." David smiled and reached for her hands. "I know you do. That's one of the things I love about you." They had met by accident 6 months ago. Emily had been lost in the industrial zone, trying to find medical supplies for her sick neighbor. The Vextai guards had stopped her and were about to arrest her for being in the wrong sector. David had appeared and told the guards that Emily was his assigned cultural liaison. It was a lie, but his work badge as an engineer gave him some authority. The guards let her go. Later, David found Emily to make sure she was safe. They talked for hours about life before the invasion, about their families and dreams. Emily learned that David was Navajo, from the reservation zone in the north. He was one of the few humans the Vextai trusted with important engineering work, but only because they needed his skills to maintain their mining operations. "How are things in your zone?" Emily asked as they sat together on an old wooden bench. David's face grew serious. "Not good. The aliens are forcing more families to relocate to the mining camps. They say it's temporary work, but no one ever comes back. My grandfather thinks they're trying to scatter our people so we'll forget our traditions." Emily felt anger rise in her chest. "They're doing the same thing to us. Last week they moved 3 families from our neighborhood because they said we had too many people in one area. But I think the real reason was that those families were teaching their children about Mexican history." "Your grandfather is right," Emily continued. "They want to make us forget who we are. If we don't remember our cultures, we can't pass them on to our children." David nodded. "My grandmother used to say that our stories and traditions are like seeds. If we plant them in good soil, they grow strong. But if we let them die, they're gone forever." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the wind whistle through the broken windows of the old church. Emily felt safe here with David, even though she knew their relationship was dangerous. The Vextai had made it clear that humans from different cultural zones were not allowed to form personal relationships. They called it the Cultural Purity Law. "I have something to tell you," David said quietly. "My supervisor has been asking questions about where I go during my free time. I think someone saw us together." Emily's stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "He wanted to know if I had been visiting other zones without permission. He also asked if I had any friends outside the reservation zone." David took her hand. "Emily, I think we need to be more careful." But even as he said the words, Emily could see in his eyes that he didn't want to stop seeing her any more than she did. Their love had grown stronger every week. In a world where the aliens tried to keep humans apart and afraid, finding someone who understood her felt like a miracle. "Maybe we should stop meeting," Emily said, though the words felt like poison in her mouth. Do you want to stop? David asked. Emily looked into his eyes. No, I don't want to stop. I think I love you, David. I love you too, he said, pulling her closer. And that's exactly why we can't let them win. If we stop living and loving the way we want to, then they've already defeated us. Outside the church, neither Emily nor David noticed the small metal device hovering silently near the window. The Vextai surveillance drone recorded everything with its multiple sensors. Every word they spoke, every touch they shared. Every moment of their forbidden love was being transmitted back to the alien authorities. In the Vextai control center across town, Commander Thekmore watched the video feed with interest. The tall alien's scaled skin gleamed under the harsh lights as he studied the two humans on his screen. Perfect, he said in his clicking alien language. Another example to show the others what happens when humans refuse to follow our rules. He pressed a button on his control panel. Within minutes, armed Vextai soldiers would be on their way to the old church. Emily Rodriguez had just become their newest prisoner, and her punishment would serve as a warning to any other humans who dared to love across the cultural lines the aliens had drawn. The trap was set, and love had walked right into it. Emily woke up in a cold metal cell. Her head hurt and her mouth felt dry. She tried to remember what happened, but everything was fuzzy. The last thing she could recall was sitting with David in the old church. They were talking about their love when suddenly the doors burst open. Vextai soldiers had rushed in wearing their black armor. David had jumped up and grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the back door of the church. But more soldiers were waiting outside. Emily remembered David shouting for her to run, and then something hit her in the back. Everything went dark after that. Now she was alone in this tiny room with metal walls and no windows. A small light in the ceiling gave off a harsh white glow. The only furniture was a hard bench attached to the wall. Emily's teaching clothes were gone, replaced by a gray jumpsuit with numbers printed on the front. The metal door opened with a loud clang. Two Vextai guards entered the cell. They were tall and thin, with scaly green skin and large black eyes. They never spoke to humans directly, only gave orders through their translation devices. Prisoner 2847, a mechanical voice said from one guard's chest unit. You will come now. Emily stood up on shaking legs. Where are you taking me? What happened to David? The guards did not answer. They grabbed her arms and pulled her out of the cell. Emily found herself in a long hallway with dozens of other metal doors. She could hear crying and shouting from behind some of them. Other humans were trapped here too. They walked through several corridors until they reached a large room with high ceilings. This must be the courthouse, Emily realized. She had heard about this place but never seen it. The Vextai had turned the old Santa Fe government building into their legal center. They called it Compliance Center 47 now. The room was full of aliens and a few human guards who worked for them. Emily was pushed toward a metal chair in the center of the room. Above her on a high platform sat three Vextai judges. The middle one was larger than the others, with darker scales and more elaborate markings on his face. Human Emily Rodriguez, the mechanical translation voice announced. You stand accused of cultural contamination in the first degree. You have violated the cultural purity laws by engaging in forbidden relationships across tribal boundaries. Emily's heart was beating so fast, she thought it might explode. I want to see a lawyer. I have rights. The large judge made a sound like clicking insects. The translator converted his words. Commander Thekmore speaks. Under Vextai law, humans have no individual rights. You exist to serve the Empire and maintain cultural stability. You have chosen chaos instead. A large screen appeared behind the judges. Emily watched in horror as video played showing her and David in the church. Every moment of their private conversation was displayed for the court to see. Their first kiss, their words of love, their plans to keep meeting despite the danger. The evidence is clear, Commander Thekmore continued. This human has deliberately chosen to corrupt the natural order. She has mixed her genetic and cultural essence with a member of the Navajo tribe. This contamination threatens the stability we have worked to create. Emily found her voice. Love is not contamination. David and I care about each other. We're not hurting anyone. The room fell silent. The alien judges stared down at her with their large black eyes. Finally, Commander Thekmore spoke again. You speak of love, but you do not understand what you have done. Before we arrived, humans fought endless wars because of their differences. Different skin colors, different religions, different tribes. Millions died in these conflicts. We brought peace by creating separation. Each group stays with their own kind. No mixing, no fighting. Emily felt anger building inside her. That's not peace. That's prison. You didn't stop us from fighting, you just locked us in cages. Silence. The commander roared, his real voice cutting through the mechanical translation. You will learn the price of defying our wisdom. The judge on the left leaned forward. What of the male? The Navajo engineer? Commander Theckmore's scales seemed to darken. He escaped into the desert. Our pursuit teams lost his trail in the rocky areas north of the city. But he is no longer important. This female will serve as our example. Emily's heart jumped with relief. David was free. At least one of them had gotten away. But her relief quickly turned to fear as she realized what the commander meant about making her an example. Emily Rodriguez, Commander Theckmore announced, his voice carrying through translation speakers around the room. For the crime of cultural contamination, for deliberately violating the purity laws, and for refusing to show proper respect for Vextai authority, this court sentences you to exile in the Hollow Zones. Emily had heard whispers about the Hollow Zones, but no one really knew what they were. Some said they were underground prisons. Others thought they were work camps in the desert. Now she was going to find out. The sentence will be carried out immediately, the commander continued. You will be fitted with compliance shackles to ensure proper behavior. You will work in the mineral extraction facilities until your debt to society is paid. How long? Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. The three judges looked at each other. Commander Theckmore's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. Your sentence is indefinite. When you have learned to value cultural purity over selfish desires, you may be reconsidered for release. Emily felt like the floor was disappearing beneath her feet. Indefinite meant forever. She would never see David again, never see her family, never teach children again. Two human guards approached her chair. These were humans who had chosen to work for the aliens in exchange for better treatment. Emily recognized one of them, Maria Santos, who used to live in her neighborhood. Maria, please, Emily whispered as they lifted her from the chair. You know me. You know I'm not a criminal. Maria's face was hard and cold. You broke the law, Emily. You chose to put your own desires above the safety of our community. Now you have to face the consequences. As they dragged her toward a side door, Emily heard Commander Theckmore speaking to the court recorder. Make sure this trial is broadcast to all human settlements. Let them see what happens when they choose individual desires over collective stability. The door closed behind Emily with a final clang. She was taken down another hallway to a medical room where Vextai technicians were waiting. They forced her into a metal chair and began attaching strange devices to her head and neck. Compliance shackles, one technician explained through his translator. They will help you make better choices. Emily felt a sharp pain as the devices activated. Suddenly her thoughts felt heavy and slow. The anger and fear were still there, but they seemed distant, like they belonged to someone else. As they prepared to transport her to the Hollow Zones, Emily managed one last clear thought. David was still free. Somewhere out in the desert, he was still fighting. That meant hope was still alive. The transport ship flew for hours before Emily felt it landing. The compliance shackles made everything feel like a dream. She could think, but her thoughts moved slowly like thick honey. She could feel emotions, but they seemed far away and unimportant. When the doors opened, Emily saw her new home for the first time. The hollow was a massive underground cavern carved deep into the mountain. Artificial lights hung from the rocky ceiling, casting harsh shadows everywhere. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and something chemical that burned her nose. Hundreds of humans moved through the cavern like ants. They all wore the same gray jumpsuits and had the same metal devices attached to their necks. These were the compliance shackles, Emily realized. Everyone here was a prisoner like her. New arrivals follow the red line, a voice announced through speakers hidden in the rocks. Emily looked down and saw a red stripe painted on the stone floor. She followed it with 5 other new prisoners, all walking with the same slow, dreamy steps. The red line led to a processing area where human supervisors waited. These humans didn't wear shackles, Emily noticed. They had chosen to work for the Vextai in exchange for freedom. I'm Supervisor Johnson. A middle-aged man with gray hair told the group, You're here because you broke Vextai law. Your job now is to work hard and prove you can follow rules. Maybe someday you'll earn your freedom. Emily wanted to ask questions, but the shackles made it hard to care enough to speak. Johnson continued his speech. You'll work 18 hours a day in the extraction tunnels. You'll mine crystals that power important Vextai equipment. This work is your chance to serve society in a useful way. The blue line will take you to your sleeping area. The green line leads to the work tunnels. Mealtime is announced over the speakers. Emily followed the blue line with the other prisoners. The sleeping area was a large cave filled with metal bunk beds. Hundreds of people lay on thin mattresses, some sleeping, others staring at the ceiling with empty eyes. Emily found an empty bed and sat down. The woman in the next bunk turned to look at her. She was African American, maybe 40 years old, with kind eyes that somehow still showed intelligence despite the shackles. I'm Marcus, the woman said quietly. Used to be a doctor before they brought me here. What's your name? Emily, she answered. I was a teacher. What did you do to end up here? Marcus asked. Emily tried to remember, but the shackles made her memories fuzzy. I loved someone they said I wasn't supposed to love. Marcus nodded sadly. Same as most of us. They don't like it when humans care about each other across their made-up boundaries. She pointed to a young Asian woman sleeping nearby. That's Lisa, she was a scientist. Got arrested for sharing research with people from other cultural zones. Over the following days, Emily learned the routine of the Hollow. Every morning, sirens woke the prisoners at dawn. They had 30 minutes to eat a bowl of gray soup that tasted like nothing. Then they followed the green line to the work tunnels. The tunnels were hot and dark. Emily was given a heavy tool that looked like a combination of a pickaxe and a laser cutter. Her job was to cut special crystals out of the rock walls. The crystals glowed with a blue light and felt warm to the touch. The work was back-breaking. Emily's hands blistered and her back ached constantly. But the worst part was the way the shackles made her not care about the pain. She knew she should be angry about her situation, but the anger felt distant and unimportant. During meal breaks, Emily talked with Marcus and Lisa. Slowly, she learned more about the Hollow and the other prisoners. There were people from every background imaginable: Hispanic, Native American, African American, Asian, white, and many mixed heritage people like herself. The aliens are smart, Marcus explained one day as they sat in the eating area. They put us all together down here so we'd blame each other for our problems. But look around. We're not fighting. We're helping each other survive. Emily looked around the cavern and realized Marcus was right. Despite coming from the cultural groups the Vextai said couldn't get along, the prisoners worked together. They shared food when someone was sick. They helped each other with the heavy crystal extraction work. They told stories to keep their spirits up. Why aren't we fighting like the aliens said we would? Emily asked. Lisa joined their conversation. Because their whole theory is wrong. Humans don't naturally hate each other. We naturally help each other. The aliens had to work really hard to create the divisions they wanted. As weeks passed, Emily began to understand what the prisoners were really mining. The crystals weren't just valuable minerals. They were some kind of power source that the Vextai needed for their technology. Every crystal the humans dug up made their oppressors stronger. But Emily also noticed something else. Even with the compliant shackles, the prisoners were finding ways to resist. They worked slower when the supervisors weren't watching. They accidentally damaged equipment. They shared information about weak points in the tunnel systems. Marcus had been in the Hollow for 2 years and had learned many secrets. The crystals we're mining power the shackle network, she whispered to Emily one night. If someone could damage the main crystal chamber, all our shackles would stop working. Where is this chamber? Emily asked. Deep in the center of the mountain. But it's heavily guarded. Only a few humans are allowed in there, and they're the ones who completely sold out to the aliens. Emily felt something stirring inside her that the shackles couldn't quite suppress. It might have been hope, or maybe it was love. She thought about David somewhere above ground, probably thinking she was dead. She thought about all the other humans trapped in places like this. Meanwhile, far above in the desert, David was indeed thinking about Emily. He had joined with other Navajo resistance fighters, and they were planning something big. Tom Littlefeather, the group's leader, had been watching the Hollow for months. He believed it was more than just a prison. The power readings from that mountain are off the charts, Tom told David as they studied maps in their hidden camp. Whatever they're doing down there, it's important to their whole operation. David stared at the mountain that held Emily prisoner. Then that's where we need to strike. What none of them knew yet was that the hollow contained the regional control center for all Vextai operations in the Southwest. The crystals the prisoners mined didn't just power their shackles. They powered the entire alien occupation network. Emily was about to become the key to freeing not just herself, but potentially all of humanity in their region. She just didn't know it yet. David crouched behind a red rock formation, watching the hollow's entrance through his grandfather's old binoculars. 3 months had passed since Emily disappeared into that mountain, and every day felt like torture. The compliance shackles prevented any communication from the prisoners, so he had no way to know if she was even still alive. "Anything new?" Tom Littlefeather asked, sliding up beside David on the rocky ledge. "Same as always," David replied. "Supply trucks every morning at dawn. Guard change at noon and midnight. But I've been thinking about what Jake said yesterday. Jake Yazzie was the oldest member of their resistance cell. He had been fighting the Vextai since the first day of the invasion. Where other resistance groups had failed, Jake's team survived because they combined traditional Navajo wisdom with stolen alien technology." "Jake is right," Tom said. "This isn't just a prison. Look at all the power cables running into that mountain. The energy readings our scanner picks up are massive. They're doing something important in there." David lowered his binoculars. "Emily is in there. That's all I care about." "I know you love her," Tom said gently, "but think bigger for a minute. If we can figure out what they're really doing in the hollow, maybe we can hurt them badly enough to make a real difference." That evening, the resistance cell gathered in their hidden cave camp. Jake had called a meeting to discuss the intelligence they had gathered. Besides David and Tom, there were 6 other fighters. Maria Begay was David's cousin and their best tracker. Robert Smith was a former Army medic who had joined after his family was relocated. The others were all Navajo who had escaped from the reservation zones. Jake spread out hand-drawn maps on a flat rock. His weathered face looked serious in the firelight. "I've been studying this place for months, and I think I know what we're dealing with." He pointed to the mountain on the map. "The hollow isn't just where they send human prisoners. It's their regional command center. All the power and communication signals for their operations in New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado come from inside that mountain." David felt his heart skip. "You mean Emily and the other prisoners are sitting right on top of their most important facility?" "Exactly," Jake said. "The Vextai are using human suffering as a cover for their real operation. Who would think to look for their command center in a prison?" Maria leaned forward. "What kind of operation?" Jake pulled out a small device that looked like a mix of human electronics and alien technology. "This scanner Tom built can detect different types of energy. For the past month, I've been taking readings around the mountain. The power source inside isn't just big. It's the same type of energy signature we detect from Vextai ships and weapons." Robert understood first. "They're using the prisoners to mine their power crystals. And not just any crystals," Jake continued. "Based on these readings, I think the prisoners are mining the master crystals that control all the compliance shackles in our region. If those crystals were destroyed, every shackled human for hundreds of miles would be free." The group sat in stunned silence. David felt hope and fear fighting in his chest. "How many prisoners are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate, 10,000 humans in various hollow facilities across the Southwest," Jake said. "If we could free them all at once, we'd have an army." Tom studied the map carefully. "What's the plan?" "We can't just walk up to the front door." Jake smiled, and David could see the old warrior spirit in his eyes. "We're going to use the one advantage we have that the aliens don't understand. They think humans are weak when we're separated, and they think we're chaotic when we're together. They don't understand that we're strongest when we combine our differences." He pointed to the entrance of the hollow. "David, you're going to get yourself captured." David's blood ran cold. "What?" "Hear me out," Jake said quickly. "You have the engineering skills to understand their technology. More importantly, you have a reason to be inside. You'll do anything to save Emily. The aliens understand that kind of motivation because they use it to control us." Maria shook her head. "That's suicide, Jake. They'll put compliance shackles on him the moment he's inside." "Not if he's carrying these," Jake said, pulling a small cloth bag from his jacket. Inside were 3 metal objects that looked like coins, each covered in tiny wires and alien markings. "What are they?" David asked. "EMP charges," Robert said, recognizing the technology. "But they're designed to look like Navajo silver dollars. The aliens scan for weapons and explosives, but they don't usually examine cultural jewelry closely. Jake nodded. These are special. Tom designed them using alien tech we salvaged from a crashed drone. They won't just shut down electronics. They'll disrupt the quantum frequency that powers Vextai crystal networks. David picked up one of the fake coins. It felt warm and seemed to vibrate slightly. How do I activate them? You don't, Tom said. They're set on a timer. Once you're inside and find the main crystal chamber, you leave them near the power source. They'll activate automatically after 6 hours. That's enough time for you to find Emily and get to a safe distance, Jake added. When they go off, every compliance shackle in the facility will shut down. The prisoners will be free to fight back. David felt his pulse quickening. It was dangerous, but it could work. How do I get captured without making them suspicious? Maria smiled. Leave that to me. I'll make some noise at their northern checkpoint tomorrow morning. While they're dealing with that distraction, you'll be spotted at their southern perimeter. You'll run, they'll chase you, and you'll lead them right where you want to go. Jake studied David's face. You understand this is probably a one-way mission. Even if the plan works, you might not make it out alive. David thought about Emily trapped somewhere in that mountain. He thought about all the other humans suffering under Vextai control. He thought about his grandfather's stories of warriors who fought impossible battles to protect their people. Emily believed we could beat them, David said quietly. She said love was stronger than their hatred and division. If she was willing to risk everything for that belief, then so am I. Jake nodded with approval. Then we start tomorrow. Maria will create the diversion at dawn. David, you'll need to be in position by the southern rocks before sunrise. As the meeting broke up, Tom pulled David aside. There's something else you should know. Our scouts report that Commander Thekmore himself has been visiting the Hollow regularly. Whatever they're doing in there, it's important enough to bring their regional commander out of his comfortable office. David felt a chill. Thekmore was the alien who had sentenced Emily. Good. When this is over, maybe I'll get a chance to thank him personally. The next morning, David sat on a hill overlooking the hollow as the sun rose. In a few hours, he would be inside that mountain, either saving Emily and striking a blow for human freedom, or dying in the attempt. He touched the 3 EMP coins hidden in his jacket pocket. Such small things to carry so much hope, but his grandfather had always said that the most important battles were won, not with the biggest weapons, but with the strongest hearts. David stood up and began walking toward his destiny. Somewhere in the darkness below, Emily was waiting. He would find her, free her, and show the Vextai that human love really was stronger than their systems of control. The warrior's plan was about to begin. The explosion echoed across the desert as Maria's diversionary attack hit the northern checkpoint. David heard the sirens and knew it was time. He stepped out from behind the rocks near the southern entrance of the hollow, making sure the patrol drones could see him clearly. Stop, unauthorized human in restricted zone. The mechanical voice boomed from the nearest drone. David ran toward the mountain, but not too fast. He needed to be caught, but he also needed to look like he was really trying to escape. Behind him, he could hear the whining sound of Vextai vehicles starting up. The chase lasted exactly as long as David wanted it to. He let them corner him near a steep cliff where there was nowhere to run. When the soldiers surrounded him, he raised his hands and tried to look defeated. I surrender, he said. Please don't hurt me. Commander Thekmore himself stepped out of the lead vehicle. The tall alien studied David with his large black eyes. You are the Navajo engineer, the one who escaped when we arrested your contaminated female. David felt rage building inside him, but he forced himself to look scared instead of angry. I just wanted to find her. I wanted to know if she's still alive. The commander made the clicking sound that David had learned meant Vextai amusement. How touching. Your pathetic human emotions have delivered you right to us. Yes, your female still lives. She works in our crystal mines, paying for her crimes against cultural purity. Can I see her? David asked, playing the part of a desperate lover. Of course, Thekmore said. You will see her just before you join her in permanent service to the Empire. Guards take him to processing. An hour later, David found himself in the same underground processing center, where Emily had been brought months earlier. The compliance shackles felt cold and heavy around his neck, but he had expected this. Tom had warned him that the EMP coins would not protect him from the shackles. He would have to endure their effects until the mission was complete. As the shackles activated, David felt his thoughts becoming slow and fuzzy. But somewhere deep inside, his love for Emily burned bright enough to cut through the artificial calm. He could still think clearly if he concentrated hard. Prisoner 3104, Supervisor Johnson announced. You are assigned to deep tunnel extraction. Follow the yellow line. David followed the painted line deeper into the mountain than he had expected to go. The yellow line led to an area he hadn't seen on any of the maps Jake had drawn. This was the deep extraction zone, where the most important crystals were mined. The tunnels here were different from the main mining areas. The walls glowed with a blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The crystals here were larger and brighter than anything David had seen before. These had to be the master crystals that powered the entire regional network. New worker, a familiar voice said behind him. David turned and saw Emily approaching with a group of other prisoners. His heart nearly stopped. She looked thinner than before, and her eyes had the distant look that came from months of compliance shackle control. But she was alive and she was here. Emily, he whispered. For a moment her eyes cleared and she really looked at him. David, but how? Why are you here? I came for you, he said, stepping closer. I came to take you home. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. There is no home anymore. There's only the work. The crystals must be mined. David realized the shackles had been controlling her thoughts for months. It would take time for her to remember who she really was. But he didn't have much time. The EMP coins in his pocket would activate in less than 5 hours. Emily, listen to me, he said urgently. Do you remember the old church where we met? Do you remember what you told me about love being stronger than their hatred? Something flickered in Emily's eyes. The church. Yes, I remember. But it feels like a dream. It wasn't a dream, David said. It was real. We are real. And I need you to help me with something very important. Over the next 2 hours, David worked alongside Emily and the other prisoners in the deep tunnels. Slowly, carefully, he began talking to them about life before the invasion. He reminded them of their families, their dreams, their cultures that the Vextai wanted to destroy. Marcus was there too, and David could see intelligence still burning in her eyes despite the shackles. You're not really a prisoner, she said quietly as they worked. You're here for a reason, David nodded. I'm here to free all of you, but I need your help. In a few hours, something is going to happen that will shut down all the shackles. When that happens, you need to be ready to fight. Fight with what? Emily asked. We have no weapons. David looked around the tunnel. We have these. He gestured to the heavy crystal extraction tools they were all carrying. We have the crystals themselves, and we have something the aliens can never understand. What's that? Marcus asked. Each other, David said. Look around. Every culture, every background, every group they tried to separate is represented here. When we work together, we're unstoppable. As the hours passed, David carefully moved through the tunnels, mapping the layout and looking for the main crystal chamber. The deep extraction zone was like a maze, but eventually he found what he was looking for. The master chamber was enormous, carved out of the living rock of the mountain. In the center sat a crystal formation the size of a house, glowing with intense blue light. Power cables and alien machinery surrounded it. This was definitely the heart of the Vextai regional network. David planted the 3 EMP coins at different points around the chamber, hiding them behind pieces of alien equipment. According to Tom's calculations, they would activate in 30 minutes. He rushed back to find Emily and the others. It's almost time, he told them. When the shackles shut down, we need to move fast. The guards will realize something is wrong and they'll try to stop us. Emily looked at him with clearer eyes than he had seen since his arrival. David, I remember now. I remember everything. I love you and I'm ready to fight. Marcus gathered the other prisoners around them. Pass the word quietly. When the shackles stop working, we take the tools and fight our way out. Stay together, help each other, and remember, we outnumber the guards 50-1. At exactly 6:47 p.m., the EMP coins activated simultaneously. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every compliance shackle in the facility shut down at once. The artificial lights flickered and went out, leaving only the natural glow of the crystals to light the tunnels. Emily gasped as her mind suddenly cleared completely. All around the tunnels, hundreds of prisoners were shaking their heads and blinking as their thoughts became their own again. Now, David shouted. Everyone now! The liberation of the hollow began with a roar of human voices that had been silent for too long. Prisoners grabbed their extraction tools and charged toward the main tunnel. They had been docile slaves for months or years, but now they remembered what it meant to be free. The Vextai guards were completely unprepared for a coordinated uprising. They had grown comfortable with controlling humans through the shackles. When faced with hundreds of angry, determined people fighting together, they panicked. David and Emily fought side by side, leading a group of prisoners toward the surface. The heavy crystal extraction tools made excellent weapons against the aliens' light armor. More importantly, the humans fought with something the Vextai couldn't match: the desperate courage of people who had nothing left to lose. "The entrance," Emily shouted, pointing toward a dim light ahead. "We're almost out." But as they approached the surface, David saw Commander Thekmore waiting with a squad of heavily armed soldiers. The alien commander had called for reinforcements and was making his last stand at the exit. "You think you have won," Thekmore called out, his mechanical translator echoing in the tunnel. "But you are still just humans. You will fight each other as soon as the crisis passes. It is your nature." Emily stepped forward, still holding her extraction tool. Behind her stood Marcus, Lisa, and dozens of other prisoners from every background imaginable. "You're wrong," she said. "Our nature isn't to fight each other. Our nature is to protect each other." David felt pride swelling in his chest as he watched Emily face down the alien commander. This was the woman he had fallen in love with. Brave, intelligent, and unafraid to stand up for what she believed in. "Surrender now," Emily continued, "and we'll let you leave. Keep fighting, and we'll show you what humans can really do when we work together." Commander Thekmore raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the mountain shook with a massive explosion. The master crystal chamber had finally overloaded completely, taking out the entire regional power grid. In the chaos that followed, David grabbed Emily's hand and they ran together toward the surface, toward the desert, toward freedom. Behind them came hundreds of other humans, all of them free, all of them ready to fight for a better world. The liberation had begun. 3 weeks after the liberation of the Hollow, Emily stood on a red mesa overlooking the desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Below her, the lights of Free Camp 1 twinkled like stars scattered across the valley floor. "Hard to believe how much has changed," David said, joining her on the rocky ledge. Emily smiled and took his hand. "When I was in those tunnels, I never thought I'd see a sunset again. Now look at this." The camp below them was unlike anything the world had seen since the Vextai invasion. Over 2,000 freed prisoners had gathered here, along with resistance fighters from across the region. But what made it special wasn't the size, it was the unity. Hispanic families shared meals with Navajo elders. African-American engineers worked alongside Asian scientists. White farmers taught desert survival skills to urban refugees. The cultural barriers the aliens had tried so hard to maintain were dissolving in the face of shared purpose. "Jake wants to see us at the command tent," David said. "The other camps are reporting in tonight." Emily nodded. The destruction of the Hollow had triggered a chain reaction across the Southwest. When the regional power grid failed, compliance shackles had shut down in facilities across 3 states. Thousands of humans had been freed, and most were now joining the growing resistance movement. They walked down the mesa trail toward the camp. As they passed through the settlement, Emily marveled at what they had built in just 3 weeks. Medical tents staffed by doctors from every background treated both physical injuries and the psychological damage from years of alien control. Engineers worked on reverse engineering captured Vextai technology. Teachers like Emily worked with children who had grown up under occupation, helping them remember their cultural heritage while learning to work with others. The command tent was the largest structure in the camp. Inside, representatives from a dozen different resistance cells were gathered around a table covered with maps and communication equipment. Jake Yazzie looked up as Emily and David entered. The old warrior's face was tired but hopeful. Perfect timing. Maria just got back from her scouting mission to Phoenix. Maria Bige stepped forward, still dusty from her journey. "The urban resistance cells are ready to coordinate with us. They've been watching our success here and want to replicate it in their areas." She pointed to locations marked on the map. Free Camp 2 is already established near Tucson with 800 people. Free Camp 3 is forming outside Flagstaff. The Vextai are struggling to respond because they never expected humans to organize across cultural lines like this. Tom Littlefeather looked up from a piece of alien equipment he was studying. Their whole strategy was based on keeping us separated and suspicious of each other. Now that we're working together, they don't know how to fight us. Emily stepped closer to the map. What about other regions? Are we getting word from outside the Southwest? Jake nodded grimly. Some good news, some bad. The success here has inspired uprisings in Texas and California. But the aliens are cracking down hard in other areas. They're relocating entire populations to try to break up any potential resistance. Marcus Johnson, the former doctor who had become one of their key leaders, pointed to intelligence reports scattered across the table. We're intercepting more alien communications now that Tom has figured out how to decode their signals. The Vextai High Command is getting worried. They're calling what happened here an unprecedented unity anomaly. Emily laughed despite the serious situation. Unity anomaly. They still don't understand that cooperation is natural for humans. Which gives us an advantage, David added. They're trying to fight us using strategies that assume we'll turn on each other under pressure. But pressure is exactly what brings humans together. Jake picked up a communication device that looked like a mix of human radio and alien technology. We've been in contact with resistance groups as far away as Canada and Mexico. The word is spreading. Humans can defeat the Vextai by working together instead of fighting each other. A young woman Emily didn't recognize stepped forward. Sir, we're getting a priority transmission from the East Coast. Jake activated the communicator. Static filled the tent, then cleared to reveal a human voice speaking with a slight accent. This is Free Command Boston calling Southwest Resistance. We've successfully liberated 3 hollow facilities in our region using tactics learned from your operation. Over 4,000 humans freed and organizing. Requesting coordination for simultaneous strikes against Vextai infrastructure. The tent erupted in cheers. Emily felt tears in her eyes as she realized what was happening. Their small act of love and rebellion had grown into something that was spreading across the continent. Jake spoke into the communicator. Boston, this is Southwest Command. We copy your success and are ready to coordinate. Stand by for operational planning. Over the next hour, they established contact with resistance groups in 12 states and 3 other countries. Every group told the same story. When humans worked together across the artificial boundaries the aliens had created, they became unstoppable. As the meeting wound down, Emily found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with her and David falling in love despite the rules that said they shouldn't. That love had led to her imprisonment, which had led to David's rescue mission, which had freed thousands of people who were now freeing thousands more. Commander Thekmore was wrong about human nature, she said to David as they walked back toward their shared tent. He thought we naturally fight each other, but our real nature is to love each other, protect each other, and build something better together. David stopped walking and pulled her into his arms. You know what the best part is? We're not just proving him wrong. We're showing every human on Earth what's possible when we refuse to let anyone divide us. Above them, the stars shone down on Free Camp 1. In the distance, the lights of other camps twinkled across the desert, and in cities and towns across the world, humans were looking at those lights and remembering that they didn't have to accept the divisions their oppressors had created. The next morning brought news that the Vextai were withdrawing from major population centers and consolidating their forces. It wasn't surrender yet, but it was the beginning of the end of their occupation. Emily stood once again on the mesa, but this time she wasn't alone. Hundreds of people from the camp had joined her to watch the sunrise. Children played at their feet while their parents from dozens of different backgrounds talked about the future they would build together. What do you think comes next? David asked. Emily smiled, thinking about the question. I think we're going to teach the whole galaxy what humans can accomplish when love is stronger than fear. And I think the Vextai are about to learn that the hardest thing to conquer isn't a planet or a species. It's hope. In the distance, more lights appeared on the horizon. Another group of freed humans was approaching the camp, ready to join the growing community of people who had chosen unity over division. The Vextai had tried to use human differences as a weapon against humanity. Instead, those differences had become their greatest strength. Every culture brought its own wisdom, skills, and perspectives to the fight. Every individual brought their own talents and dreams. Emily Rodriguez and David Begay had fallen in love across the boundaries their oppressors had tried to enforce. That love had sparked a revolution that was spreading across the world. And that revolution was proving every day that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't advanced technology or military might, it was humans choosing to care for each other, despite every reason they had been given to do. Otherwise, the liberation of Earth had begun with two people refusing to let anyone tell them who they could love. Now it was becoming something unstoppable, an entire species remembering what it meant to be truly free. The stars above had witnessed the fall of many civilizations, but they had never seen anything quite like humanity united.